Hello and welcome to another Writer's Showcase. We currently don't have anybody in the chat right now, so I'll just go right into bringing my lovely guests on, starting with, as ever, my lovely co-host, Neph Champion.
Hello, everyone. I look forward to reading the rest of the chapter today.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. I'm just putting it out to everyone. That way everybody can come on and take a look. Oh, okay, cool. Sweet. Thank you. And thank you. Thank you, Carl. And hello, Becca. Becca, always a pleasure. Let me bring in the others. Tarek has now a new intro. It's this one.
Tell me, do you bleed? You will.
I'm joking. It's not. It really is not.
Here's to the bard and the calling me plum. Here's to the beast and the rest of you scum. The cage is knocked in and the town is aflame, and it's ours for the taking, though you get the fame.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Yep, I had to. I couldn't resist.
I know you couldn't.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, the nice thing is we're not really doing anything other than sharing our writing, so
Yeah.
so nothing too strenuous. The pain is coming later today, at least for the audience of Smudcast and the guests, since Maggie May Fish is up today.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
God, no.
I love how that's just the immediate, oh gosh, no.
Oh, I apologize. My reaction was wrong. I should have said, oh boy. I like dealing with that kind of shit.
Yeah.
I'm probably gonna end up watching anyway, just from morbid curiosity.
Yeah, they're talking about Rambo and the Straight Story.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Oh my goodness, why?
She has the eyes of a murderer. She has the eyes of a murderer.
And why does she have so many bad takes?
Because she's the female skinny movie Bob.
Oh my god.
Yep. Anyway, let's bring in Mr. Carl Saylor. Hello.
There is no smut in workers' paradise.
Where can we watch? That would be on Smud Boy's channel. We will see you if you want to go over there. We'll see you there. But today we're going to be just showing off some of our writing. I actually have something, at least the first chapter of something that I want to preview for hopefully release this September. I did have a little announcement to make in terms of a little bit of housekeeping. There from July 23rd to the 24th, I will be in Cedar City at the Utah Shakespeare Festival with my family, so I will not be able to do any streams that week. So that'll just be a break, ache for everybody. So everything will be canceled that week, unfortunately.
Which one? July? What to what?
July 23rd through the 24th.
Okay.
So,
23rd to the 24th?
20, no, let me see. I think it's, so from the Wednesday of the 24th, so that would be about 22nd through 24th. But either way, like all streams on the weekend of the 24th are going to have to be canceled because I won't be able to do it at the appropriate time,
Okay.
since I'll be spending I'll be spending my time with my family, so
That's
I
okay.
won't be able to spend time with y'all,
We understand.
unfortunately.
Aw.
You've earned a break.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The hell he has.
Well, I like doing this. This isn't, and even though I don't I'm hoping to eventually, like, maybe get paid for this, or at least like make passive income from this. Probably won't happen for a very long time, but it's worth it.
Probably won't. Yeah.
Anyway, we do have some new
Hope
people in
springs
the chat.
eternal.
Yeah, we do have a new person in the chat. Welcome to Clay Hoffman. Welcome to Johan. Hi, Replica Films. Nice to see you.
What about Lost
Hello.
West? Yeah.
Hi, Lot West. Nice to see you. Alrighty, so Valerian is gonna be take a little bit to get here, so we'll just go with Neph, then Tarek, then Carl, and then Valerian when he comes in, and I'll finish last.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Sound good?
I can take that.
So, last time when I read, I was reading Foxes and Demon Slayers chapter 5? No, chapter 4, I'm pretty sure. And I ended with my two main characters going off on a quest. So, let's get started, shall we? Kirito stopped a fair distance away and knelt in the tall grass. He crept forward on quiet feet, pulling Asuna down with him. What is this? Asuna asked as she tried to copy how he moved. Shh, be a bit quieter, Kirito cautioned. We are close to the smoke we saw earlier, and I don't want to take any chances. So, what's here? Asuna asked in a whisper. Kirito carefully moved a branch of their hiding place aside. Wolf demons, he explained shortly. According to a family friend, there was a wolf demon who was always claiming that his sister belonged to him. The wolf was called Koga. So, you think that this could be what's happening? Asuna reasoned. Maybe. Kirito's eyes narrowed. I'd like to try and talk with the demons first, but I doubt I'll get the chance with the NPC here. Meow. Kirara purred, nuzzling Kirito's neck. Kirito chuckled. Thanks for the vote of confidence, forever. He scratched behind the neck of Ata's ear. You're a demon slayer? The NPC asked softly. I am, Kirito replied. Then please solve this peacefully if you can. Kirito and Asuna's quest logs updated to show the changed conditions. Kirito looked around and noticed the path leading away from the camp in a direction other than where they'd come from. Asuna, he nodded his head in the right direction. Asuna gave him a nod when she noticed the path. What are we going to do? We are going to circle around, come back along the path with Kirara in her big form so that it's obvious that I'm a demon slayer, Kirito explained. Then we'll see if you can start a peaceful dialogue. And if we can't, Asuna asked, her eyes sad, then we have no choice but to kill them all, Kirito confirmed. This is what my life will be, Asuna. If you can't handle it, I'm not going to think any less of you. Asuna shook her head. That's not it. Then let's go. You can tell me what's up later. Kirito gave her an understanding smile as he started putting distance between him and the camp of demons. Asuna scrambled to follow him. Once they were far enough away, the pair turned and rather easily found the path leading to the camp. Kirata jumped off Kirito's shoulder and grew larger. Kopel shivered as he looked up at the mountain they were supposed to get past to meet up with Kirito and Orgo. This mountain is giving me bad vibes, he said. Klein followed his gaze. Mount Moon, he said flatly. You're kidding! Koharu shook her head upon seeing Klein's raised eyebrows. She sighed. There's a good reason why everyone hates Mount Moon. Who in their right mind would make a Mount Moon stand-in? Everyone asked incredulously. Everyone in the party looked at each other. Someone who loves those games, Kinemith said finally. How much do you want to bet there are bat demons living there? Denham snarked. No one is going to take that bet, Denham, Ishin said with a sigh. We had best get going, Kopel sighed. This was going to be a long trek. Koga looked up as the faint scent of Demon Slayer made itself known. Maybe now they would get results. Welcome, Demon Slayer, he said when he saw the young man with a battle-ready Nekomata by his side. I heard you were causing trouble for our nearby village, the Demon Slayer said calmly. The new one that's built up around the Combat Master's hut and training ground? Koga asked, shaking his head. The land it's built on is ours, but we mean no harm to them. We've been trying to keep monsters away from them. What kind of monsters? The Demon Slayer asked. Asterius minion Bulbous Bow has been sending behemoths to this area since Asterius has heard the first and second floors have been connected for the first time in centuries, Koga said. One managed to get through our barricades, and we've been tracking it since. Are you sure it's just one? A female voice startled him, and Koga turned to see that the Demon Slayer had a half-demon fox as a companion. Foxes were known to be tricksters, but were also quite gentle unless something provoked them. There were ancient rumors that said the Jewel Priestess had taken one under her wing. Koga hadn't expected to see something like that himself. We only saw the one, he replied. Unfortunately, we've since lost the behemoth. I will have my scouts look for the one we know about, and I'll warn them to be on the lookout for more. There was a loud boom, followed by the ground shaking. Excuse me for a moment, please. Hey, Klein pointed to the light shining at the end of the tunnel. We're almost there. That's great, Klein, Kopel gasped as he tried to catch his breath. It's about time. I'm dead tired from all the mindless goblins. You aren't the only one, Kopel, Koharu sighed. Kopel gave her a tired grin. Let's get going. Koga was barely able to keep his feet as the shaking ended. Kaz, everyone all right? He called to his second. We're all right, sir, called the blue and red wolf that emerged from the largest tent. Kitoka, are you okay? Koga turned his attention back to the fox and Demon Slayer. I'm all right, Asuna, the Demon Slayer, Kirito replied. What could that have been? Asuna the fox shook her head. I don't know. There was a roar, and suddenly, out of the ground, emerged a huge rock creature. Is that the behemoth, sir? Kirito asked. I'm Koga, the leader of this pack, and yes, that's the behemoth. Kirito frowned. That doesn't look like a regular behemoth to me, he said as 2 health bars and its name, the Talus Behemoth, appeared over its headless body. Talus? Kirito blinked as he reached over his shoulder for his anneal blade. He had to be seeing things. His eyes were lying to him. Tell us. Tell us. By the jewel, he didn't. Kirithel groaned. What do you mean? Usna asked fearfully, taking a step back behind Kirithel. Kirithel eyed the behemoth, looking for a weakness as he contemplated what he was going to tell her. The Talus is a monster from the Legend of Zelda franchise, he finally replied as he spotted the stone. And it looks like Kayaba might have taken them wholesale. I'm not sure Nintendo is going to be happy if they find out. That will be Kayaba's problem, not ours, thankfully, Usna said as she summoned several fireballs to her hands. Ready when you are. Don't you know, Usna? Kirithel asked with a smirk. I'm always ready. Of course you are. Usna rolled her eyes as the opening animation finished, and she threw her foxfire at the behemoth. Martial arts boot camp. That was as hard as I thought it would be, Kirithel sighed when they returned to the boot camp with the old knight and Koga in tow. I think I hate behemoths, Asuna sighed. You aren't the only one. Kirithel also sighed. Koga and the human NPC, whose name turned out to be Kotaku, bowed in thanks as Kirithel and Asuna's quest logs updated. Thank you for helping us to settle this dispute peacefully. It was not a problem, really, Kirithel said as Koga came forward. For your efforts, I have been struggling to protect this, Koga said, dropping a shard of what looked to be a glass ball into Kirithel's hand. Kirithel looked down at the shard curiously for a moment. It seemed familiar somehow, but being able to figure out why, Kirithel placed it in his inventory. Hey guys, Kopel's voice called. We finally made it. Hey Kopel. Kirithel waved for them to come over. Do you all have a free skill slot? We should, Kopel said. Why? Kirithel and Argo shared a grin. We, Kirithel gestured to the large group, are going to take the quest for the extra skill martial arts. Now, for you new players, you do not have to keep this skill, but martial arts are good for when your weapon breaks on you. It also allows you to use combination attacks. Yep, Argo agreed. Now, obviously, this place has changed a lot from the beta. Did you find this place, Argo-sa? The fox Hanyo interrupted, the cat demon and resident information broker. I did. Argo gave Usna a very cat-like smirk. I never finished the quest, but that doesn't matter for this. Kirithel nodded. You were saying, Argo? Ah, yes. The cat demon shot her friend a thankful smile. As I was saying, I found this place in the beta, and it had obviously changed quite a lot. While you and Kiba were off on that quest to kill time, I was doing my best to find the right NPC to talk to. And I can tell by the smile on your face you found them, Koharu said when Argo stopped. Yep. Argo's smile was telling. Now, it's not an incredibly old man like I thought, but they're still old. At this point, a middle-aged man walked up to them all. Good afternoon, young ones, he said, looking over them all. Good afternoon, sir, Klein said with a cheerful wave. What are such fine young people doing here? The NPC asked. We've come seeking a new skill, sir, Kirithel said with a bow. Ah, travelers, it appears you have come to the right place, the man said with a large smile. I'm looking for a group of dedicated young people to train in my life's work. Told you I'd find him, Kiba. Argo gave them all a grin, giving the rest of the group a thumbs up. Kirithel rolled his eyes at his beta tester friend, keeping his attention on the NPC. What do we need to do? The NPC gestured to the field of huge boulders behind him. You must break one of these boulders, he replied. Mastering these combat arts is a reward all its own. Those look almost unbreakable, Asuna said with a frown. They won't be, Kirito reassured her, not taking his eyes off the NPC. So, young heroes, are you up to the challenge? The man asked with a grin. You bet we are, Kirito muttered, turning to the rest of the group now that the quest had been triggered properly. All right, everyone, pick a boulder and let's get to work. Just one thing before you all begin, the NPC spoke up, causing everyone to turn to him in confusion. In his hands, he was holding a brush and a pot of ink. Then, faster than an eye could blink, his hands blurred, and everyone cried out in surprise. These whiskers shall fade once you complete your task. Something. Let's see. Kirito turned to look at Asuna, who just so happened to be the person next to him and nearly choked. Something's on my face now, isn't there? She asked apprehensively. Kirito started to smile. Fox whiskers for the fox girl. He tried not to laugh. You are adorable. Asuna's face went bright red. It was late afternoon when they were all taking a break, and it was then Argo witnessed more of the strangeness that seemed to be happening to her friend Kiba. If I could have a word with you, Demon Slayer, the old man asked, causing the group to look up. You may, but I hope you don't mind speaking in front of everyone, since I really don't want to move right now, Kibo said with a sheepish grin. No, this is not that. This is not that sensitive that it be only for your ears, Demon Slayer, he said. You did well to rid us of the behemoth, but that is not the only one Asterius and his brothers Baron and Nato have sent. Oh? Kibo sighed. I'm not sure why I expected any differently. What seems to be the problem? News travels fast in this castle. The man shook his head. The bulbous bow is usually the most peaceful of Asterius' minions, but the moment he heard you, a demon slayer, had appeared in the castle, he seemed to go insane. So Bulba's bow is making trouble for everyone then? Kibo rested his chin on a fist and looked over their group. We'll take care of it, sir. Don't worry. Before we continue, I want to make sure I'm on everyone's friend list, Argo said, so that we can stay in contact, so I can get in touch. Everyone took a few minutes to add Argo to their growing friend list. And that's the end of the chapter.
All right. I got nothing for this. This is so outside of my realm.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry.
I'm hearing echo.
I don't. It's probably not me.
I know it's not me.
Might be me.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But well, the stopping point from 2 weeks ago, it was basically in the middle of the action, as you could tell.
I'm sorry. The echo's distracting me.
I know. It's distracting me too.
Jesus. All right, I think it's gone now.
Cool. Yeah. Becca is the queen of British wit around here. She's also the queen of Tarek's heart.
You just feel the need to tease us.
Yeah. And I just know that you'll eventually you'll find ammunition to tease me at some point. Don't worry.
I'm not worried about that. I'm just saying.
Mr. Balerian, that is impossible. You are not on the stream, so that is not possible. But anyway, I must bring before we give Neph her just feedback of how we tell her how awesome she is. Though I have no idea if this is in any way, though I have no context for a lot of this, out of her stories. Allow me to bring in Count Balerian.
Hello,
Sorry.
Balerian.
Sorry, the C's threw me off. I apologize.
Oh, I'm not fussed.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you give me such great ammunition. I can't not use it.
Yep. I made the same comment in private chat. Just found that out, Tarek.
Don't worry. You will receive ammunition at some point. It just won't be today.
I'm not. If I was really concerned about it, you'd know.
It's not hard to find ammunition. We'll find ammunition probably today. I mean, if worst comes to worst, we could be obnoxious and make Mormon jokes.
I was about to say there's always the lowest common denominator or the lowest hanging fruit.
Yeah, that would be obnoxious though. So,
and you are nothing if not obnoxious. Ain't that right, Balerian?
Who, me? I'm the most polite person in the universe.
You're the most what person?
Polite.
Oh, yeah, you are. Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, that's a good assessment.
Rebecca also has one for you. Yep.
I do not have an incest obsession.
No comment.
I just wrote some into my book. If it was an obsession, it would be in every book. It's not just 2.
I bet you coded it in the other books, though.
I don't believe in the word coding.
Over.
Don't use the word that doesn't apply.
I reject your reality and substitute my own.
All right, then.
I love that show so much.
It was what? So you say I have an obsession when it's only in 1 or 2 books. That doesn't count as an obsession.
1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or. So anyway, all I heard was that poor kid turning into a fox.
Yeah, I think mostly just I like the simple character writing. That's what I like. And I don't have any other context, so that's pretty much the only feedback I can give.
You know what? I'm just gonna say it. All of these characters were out of character for a show I never watched.
Well, yeah. The main character's actually supposed to be a bit of a loner, but there is reason for why he's not a loner.
Well, it's kawaii.
It's kawaii desu. I agree.
Kawaii desu. How do you say really cute?
I believe that's it. Kawaii desu.
There's no very or something in Japanese.
I think you got to put on cat ears or something, and then say kawaii as you put your hands in front of you. I think that's the way it works.
I think I need to say in a high-pitched voice too.
Maybe.
I do not want to hear that.
I don't want to hear it either, though. So please don't.
Okay.
Kawaii.
I know you can. I know you can add a yo to the end of a phrase that is sort of like an exclamation point.
Ooh, what's that you had? Sorry.
There was if you add like yo at the end of a phrase, that it's a little grammatical particle that basically functions like an exclamation mark.
Oh, kind of like yo. Kawaii desu yo.
Exactly.
Oh
Well,
my
I mean,
God.
sort of.
Let me say that again. Uh-oh.
Oh God, false
Well-
cognates.
Well, the thing is, kawaii is like Neph's like permanent adjective. So
Pretty much.
Kawaii desu yo.
Yeah. Yes, that sounded like an anime character.
well, yeah. I think it isn't it Kay.
No, Kawa.
Oh.
I.
Oh yeah. No, that's how it is.
He got confused because the Y begins with a what sound.
Yeah, the I is an E sound.
Kawaii.
Alrighty.
So,
Any other
Poor
feedback?
Becca.
No, I got nothing.
All of
say
you
lots of-
shall be deported to special gulag.
let's say lots
I
of
shall be re-educated.
No, Johan, 2 eyes.
let's say lots of things in Japanese just to annoy Brightness Becca. Shogun.
Deported to Gulag on Iturup Island, which belongs to Russia, not
I-
Japan. Ha ha.
I think Becca's just going like this in the chat.
Tell me. Do you bleed? You will.
That Batman
Yep.
sounds so weird.
That is again.
Yeah. Alrighty.
So,
So it's my turn.
Yep.
can I
yes,
go
definitely.
next, please? Sorry.
Oh, you need to go next?
Well, I usually go AFK around 4, but I was delayed today because
Okay.
I had a telephone call.
All right.
Oh, okay. Go for
Sorry
it.
about that.
Yeah, no,
No
that's
worries.
totally
Go for it.
fine. That's totally fine.
Okay,
Any other thoughts on what Neph shared? I don't have much.
Not so much.
yeah, just that I'm sorry for the poor girl. That's all.
Yeah.
You'll understand after I show you a couple of things.
Alrighty, Camp Learn.
Oh,
You were
I
up.
thought she was going to do a share screen thing.
No.
Oh, okay. Okay, this is the one. This is the one. I don't think there are any monkeys in this chapter, though.
Oh, then I don't care.
There might be something else instead. Let's see what happens. Chapter 9. The Emperor's Justice. And this is the serious one, I'm afraid. The monkeys being the most serious part, not really. Okay. Now, Chapter 9. The Emperor's Justice. You idiot, said Mpu'u. What on earth possessed you to kill her? Gaga had expected a warmer welcome. Surely her coup in poisoning the Countess had been brilliant. But her employers seemed not to think so. At the first opportunity, Gaga had slipped away from the temple on the estates of Tserthaton and ridden to the town of Anathos. There she had boarded the Imperial Glory, whose captain had become obsequious when she flashed her pass, and had kicked some smaller fry off the ship. Thence she had made her way to court, basking in her expected moment of triumph. Now this moment was at hand, but was not very triumphant. Gaga had been summoned to meet Mpu'u and Exalted Box, that's the Emperor, in the vestibule to the Imperial bedchamber, which was the preferred location for relatively secret audiences. Equeque liked to stay as near the bedchamber and Berusa as possible, the sooner to get back to work. The room was hung with a tapestry of gold and silver depicting what else? The glories of the imperial house. This tapestry, however, had been drowned out by a barrage of pornography that was as luxurious as it was tasteless. The emperor wanted to add a ruby tapestry with more panegyric pornography, but the budget did not support that. Clearly, the peasants weren't working hard enough. Glorious, I did it to please Exalted, replied Gaga, almost sulkily. Your task, said Mpu'u, with a kind of exaggerated patience, was to find incriminating information that we could use against Marojobo, that is the Count Pilamar. Murdering people impedes your usefulness as a spy. You were meant to get yourself trusted, at which it appears that you have signally failed. Now, do you have anything we can use at all? Yes, Glorious, replied Gaga. They had a secret visitor called Muku, a dissident priest. They spoke to him at length and frequently spoke sarcastically of Exalted Box. How durst they? Said Exalted Box. They must die. Yes, that was rather the idea, I believe, Exalted Father, said Mpu'u. Your idea, if idea be the right word. This news is a bit more like it. We can summon Marojobo to court under the impression that it's about Burunu's claim on whatever the girl's name was. Perhaps even have Burunu go to the castle and serve the summons. He's an annoyance anyway. If he died too, it would be no great loss. Marojobo wouldn't, that is Pilamar, it gets confusing, sorry, wouldn't dare confuse Exalted my emissary, said Equeque. He's a coward. He's not a coward, said Mpu'u. But Exalted may be right that he won't kill Burunu, unless Burunu does something stupid, which he might, since the whole thing is stupid. I want Garawala dead too, said the Emperor. Conveniently, we have another witness, said Mpu'u. He opened the door to the imperial chamber and said, Bring him in. The guards led in Baba. Tell us what you saw and heard, said Mpu'u. And no stammering this time. We haven't all day for your gibberings. Exalted Glorious, began Baba, throwing himself on the ground. Your splendor knows no. Yes, said Mpu'u. Just tell Exalted what you told Glorious me earlier. Yes, Glorious. Count Garawada of Peje received I, Glorious, said, no stammering, said Mpu'u. And Muko doesn't even look like Glorious me. I, Exalted, want Garawada dead, added the Emperor. Yes, Glorious Exalted, sobbed Baba. He received Muku and gave him a horse and provisions and sent him off to Pilamar. They're colluding against Exalted books, and Barama went with him. I, Exalted, will pardon Barama if he agrees to Exalted will, said Equeque. How clement, said Mpu'u dryly. Very good. We can have the governor or Ea Bemwembawa kill him. if he really wants that promotion. He'll do what exalted I say, finished Ikwekwe. Have Bruno and brought here immediately. Tell that pestilent priest Malala Ama to come too. Glorious Umpu'u stepped us outside and spoke a few curt words to the servant on guard there. This whole business is imbecilic, he thought. No good will come of it. It's a pity that exalted will trumps provincial nobles' bribes. And let me see how long the next section is. Next section is, let's see. I think I read, okay, let's see. Okay, maybe I'll try reading the next section. Maybe it's not that long.
Okay, go for it.
Let's see. Pilamar was sitting alone in the study, supposedly going over the castle's accounts, but in reality trying to write a letter to Margaret, who had left for Darzaz with Muku, still in the capacity of her tutor, Grant the Master of Arms as her bodyguard, and her maidservants and her former governess, Varane. Her sister Audrey had gone with them. The Count thought it best to keep both daughters a safe distance away until things blew over. Margaret's last words still resounded in his ears. She was just upset at having to leave, he tried to convince himself. Even leaving for a few months to visit the imperial court was hard for her. It's not that Sacred Nine vouchsafed her any kind of foresight, surely. But he could not forget her words. Gracious Father, I have the feeling, the horrible feeling, that we shan't meet again in this life. We are alone. You needn't say gracious Father, he had said lightly. Inside, though, he had been worried, even shaken. The days when he could protect his daughters were rapidly coming to a close, if they hadn't already. Edrion, her husband, will protect them, he said aloud, coming back to the present. The province of Darzaz is far from court, and by the grace of Nihandra it is strong. So long as they don't openly take up arms, the court will leave them alone. Fair daughters, he began to write. As I write these words, it is 2 weeks since you left Serthaton, and if the roads are good, you should be about 3/4 of the way to Duke Edrion's court. I know the land route is difficult, but once you reach the town of, Zudzeach, you can hire a boat upriver to the castle Malabwer Lishbears, as we discussed before you left. This has the added advantage that... He paused. It is indeed lucky that Margaret had the sense not to go by ship, or she would have had to go through Tharmalon and almost certainly fall into Burunu's sticky hands. But that's not necessarily the most... That's not perhaps the most... That's not necessarily the most politic thing to put in a letter. How to warn her about the letter, though? Oh, yes, the letter. This letter, which the Count had received the day after Margaret's departure, had rekindled his fears and helped make his nights even more sleepless than they already were. It was a letter from Burunu, the governor of Ikhalamu, which had arrived in a green and crimson envelope and was signed with the governor's seal. Noble Count, Great One has dealt me an unforgivable insult. When you and Lady Margaret were my guests, I requested her hand. At the time, you protested that she was too young, etc. So I waited. Now I learn that you have arranged an engagement to another party, and to one of lesser rank than at that. I had the prior claim, and that ought to have been respected, just as Sauron's prior claim to the hand of Avu was honored. Those are just figures in their religion. You are not treating me according to law, and I therefore bring my protest against you to exalted box. May it grant me justice on my heart's desire. Remember, Ikri upholds those who follow the law, and brings low those who flout it. For the law is of sacred nine. Bruno's heart's desire? My ruin and my lands, I dare say, he murmured. And Duke Edrion is of higher rank. These Sandoranian nobles are too arrogant by half. He wished Margaret were there, so he could talk. No, it was better so. Bruno can't get his paws on her, no matter how the Emperor rules, he thought. Not that there was any doubt of the result. Exalted Box had its own reasons for favoring Bruno, and such laudable reasons. And as for Sauron, Bruno must have read a different version of the Waramod from me. The law? What does Bruno care for the law? How had Bruno found out about the engagement? All clues pointed towards Gaga. It was most likely indeed that Gaga had been given to Pylamar by the Emperor for precisely this purpose. But how then did the messages get out of the castle and make their way to court? Perhaps Gaga bribed a courier, or revealed to him that she is an Imperial agent, he thought. Or perhaps she simply handed him a letter telling him it was from me. Either way, I should have insisted that all my letters be personally vetted by me, and that the courier only take letters directly from my hand. Of course, Bruno didn't have a case. No jurist of whichever school would have agreed that Pylamar was under the slightest obligation to marry off his daughter to anyone to whom she wasn't engaged. The engagement with Edrion the Younger had been, yes, politically risky, but hardly unlawful, and no jurist could gainsay that. No jurist who wasn't corrupt or afraid or both, he said aloud. The will of the ruler cannot alter law, for the ruler stands under the law of Sacred Nine. But that makes little or no difference as far as my likely fate is concerned. Should I be summoned before the Emperor? I could heal the sick, and I'd still be adjudged a criminal on some pretext or other, or possibly even without a pretext. The most holy Karat himself couldn't survive what passes for judgment in Sundaran these days. The court and its hand-picked jurists surely won't let a small thing like the law stop them. He scratched his head and stared somewhat blankly for a while at what he'd written. It's a bit of a gamble sending Muku on to Darzaz when the Duke is vague on whether he'll actually allow Muku to publish the Grand Yaji's decree, he mused. Doesn't like being pinned down. Neither does reality in general, and when it does, it's usually something bad, at least in this life. Pylamar sighed and made a helpless gesture. Oh well, I guess Darzaz is probably the least dangerous place in the Emperor for Blessed Muku to stay. I can only hope it's also the least dangerous for Margaret, and that she stays there. He made another helpless gesture and began writing again. Whatever may befall, you and Adri are in my mind and heart. Remember what I have taught you about ruling. Follow the advice of wise and loyal counselors, and read the Waramod commentaries daily. Pray often to Sacred Nine and to Karat and his sacred family, and lead a blameless life. Farewell, my daughters. Suhrun Yaja Mishtaka Chanji. Somehow this didn't seem quite adequate, but it would have to do. He stopped writing, folded the letter, placed it in a blue and light green envelope, and sealed it. Then he sat for a while, his head bowed. Finally, he shook himself and forced himself to concentrate on the receipts. I had best get on with the accounts. It won't do to have the estate in a ditch when I am arrested. And that's that.
Very interesting. I like the political drama there, and also like the really logical cause and effect from the previous actions the character's taken. I think that's very good.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah. I'm a sucker for fantasy religion.
you. Yeah. There's a decent bit of that in here.
I gotta give you credit to the language. I don't know if you made it up or not, but it did sound like it had some sense to it. Like it did flow into each other the way a language should.
Yeah, everything in the language means something. Almost everything. There are different languages, so it gets confusing because at one point there's this character I'm calling by two different names because there's a Sandoranian name, but he has his own native name. So hopefully that wasn't too confusing. When I tried to make that bit as unconfusing as possible, but who knows?
That sounds fine. Sounds fine enough.
Yeah, I liked it.
Good. So it didn't stink. That's good to know. And next time we'll do some bozo next time.
Good. Very good. Bozo. We must have more bozo.
Yeah, unfortunately he's almost over. There's just a couple more chapters of him.
Yeah.
0 out of
Alright.
10. Unsubscribed.
Who unsubscribed?
Bozo, the Lord of the Rings parody.
Oh.
So basically, everyone unsubscribed after I stopped reading those. Was that what you just said?
What?
That'd be kind of extreme. Kind of extreme Bozo fan. If everyone started unsubscribing in hordes as soon as I stopped reading that.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yep.
Lose was the only reason I'm here, says Brightness Becca.
Ow.
You all right?
Ow. What Becca said. Ow. That just hurts.
Well, she never said that. Valeria just said that she said that.
No?
No, it's there.
It's in the chat.
Oh. Oh, true.
That was rather cruel, Brightness.
Ouch.
Bozo is best girl.
Wouldn't it be best boy? As far as I know, Becca doesn't swing that way, as far as I'm aware. Anyway, pretty simple. I do like the ramping up of the conflict. I'm interested to see what's going to happen in when the Exalted goes full on I want my bride or whichever.
Goes full Ramsay on them. Well, he's not exactly Ramsay. He's not quite so disgusting as Ramsay, but
I
he
think
does want his bride.
Yeah.
Brides.
Yeah, maybe that's what I'm like subconsciously referencing, but I could be. Maybe that's what I'm just subconsciously referencing by accident. Anyway, that's all I have. Any other thoughts from the jury?
I really like the political drama myself.
Good, because that's a fair bit of the story is political stuff.
I am so jealous because I can't politic to save my freaking life.
Yeah, but yours are cuter than mine, though.
Maybe.
Well,
0 out of 10. There were no monkeys. There were no clowns. There was no pornographic statue. What are you doing, man?
No Politburo.
Politburo, I know. I hang my head in shame. I'm so ashamed. I suppose I could put a reference to monkeys in every chapter and see what happens.
Everything needs more monkeys.
A monkey.
But then that might get a little distracting too. You wouldn't be able to follow the political drama if you're.
Then make the political drama about monkeys. Planet of the Apes did it.
That would entail a massive rewrite.
All right.
Okay.
Alrighty. Let's your turn, Tarek, and then
All
Carl, and then me.
right, just to let you know, though, this is about 12 pages. I tried to separate it, but it kind of needed that length. Is that all right with you?
Sure.
It's double spaced, not like single space. So
Wouldn't
Okay.
it be alright if it was 8.8 point font or something like that, or 7 point font single space?
it's 4-point font, but that's besides the point.
What's the
No.
word count? Give or take.
Give or take, I want to say about maybe 5,000 words. So
Oh, that's good. I've got a little bit of a time crunch. I need to be out.
Yeah,
in 50
mine's
minutes.
mine's about half that.
go ahead, Carl. Then you should go first.
Okay. All right. So, if you recall from last time, we were introduced to a new character in a new story, little Shenna, who was the apprentice witch in Riverwatch and got in trouble by reanimating a dead crow. And we will see where that trouble lands her today. Amber twilight soaked through the barred windows, casting fiery strips of gold across the stone walls of Shenna's cell. The guardhouse was one of the few stone buildings in Riverwatch. Supposedly it had been built long ago as a relay station or to command the bend of the river or any number of purposes, all of which slowly fell by the wayside over generations as the town coalesced around it. Now, it was nothing more than a prison. Beyond the bars of her cell, the central guardhouse chamber was 10 paces or so from one end to the other, and the floor between those walls was of the same gray stone as everything else. Tallow candles stood cold in their holders along the wall, waiting for someone to come and light them. And in the far corner sat a small wooden table with Mistress Morana's purse sitting atop it, exactly where it had been left when the town guards took it off her. As for the guards themselves, they were nowhere to be seen. Shenna was alone in the guardhouse. She shifted her weight on the rough wooden bench and kicked idly at the hem of her skirt. She'd spent the better part of the day in the cell, waiting, pacing, dreading, trying not to look at that wooden bucket in the corner where the horrid smell lurked. A curious mixture of mortal terror and utter boredom was simmering away in her brain like a stew. Something was coming. All she knew was that it would not be pleasant. Finally, Shenna broke the stillness with a yawn and made to lay herself down along the bench. It was getting late anyhow. This plank of wood was nowhere near comfortable. It was too narrow to lie flat, and covered with splinters long enough to spear her through her thin wool blouse. But sleep was sleep. Whatever fate was in store for Shenna, she would be better equipped to face it by the light of day. Just as Shenna's eyes began to close, the great wooden guardhouse door opened, and two figures marched in. A town guardsman and a woman. Shenna jumped to her feet and rushed to the front of her cell as she recognized the second figure. "Mistress Morana!" she cried out. The woman's red hair flickered with fury in the twilight as she crossed the chamber to stand before the cell. Shenna. There was acid on her tongue. "I can explain, mistress," Shenna said frantically, but Mistress Morana cut her off with a wave of her hand. "The guards already told me what you did." I didn't know what I was doing," Shenna said. "I should have known you weren't ready to learn that spell," Mistress Morana growled. "And sneaking crystals from my cottage. I suppose you thought to impress the townsfolk with some foolish little tricks of yours?" I'm sorry," Shenna said. "I didn't mean to—" "Don't waste your breath on apologies, girl," Mistress Morana interrupted. "The village elders have already convened to decide your punishment." Shenna's stomach turned over. Here it was, the fate she had been dreading all day. Shenna gathered up her dignity and bowed her head. "I am prepared to make my penitence." Please let it be something easy. The village elders have decreed, Mistress Marana said, that you are to sit in confinement in the guardhouse for 2 days and nights. Then, on the 3rd day at noon, you are to be summoned to the market square and... She hesitated. Beheaded. The world stopped. What? It has been decided, Mistress Marana said, wringing her hands and avoiding Shenna's gaze. But I didn't mean to, Shenna stammered. There must be some way, something I can... The decision is out of my hands, Mistress Marana said. The elders have already sent for a professional headsman. Please, I can fix this, Shenna begged. I'll find the bird and put everything back the way it was, and everything will be right again, and nobody has to... The knowledge itself is blasphemy enough, Mistress Marana bellowed. And honestly, child, did you even think for a moment about how your little stunt would reflect upon me? Why, there are even people calling for my head on the chopping block as your accomplice. I swear, you've always been like this. Absolutely no consideration for other people. And after I did you such a kindness by taking you on as my apprentice. Honestly, I ought not to have bothered. I'm sorry, Shenna whimpered. Water was beginning to distort her sight. She backed away from the bars and collapsed onto the bench, burying her face in her hands as the tears began to flow. I'm so sorry. I am told the headsman is most skilled, Mistress Marana said after a few moments. She probably intended it to be reassuring. Your execution shall be swift and sure. You shan't feel any pain. Shenna didn't look up. After a few moments of horrible silence, the soft swish of skirts over stone, followed by the clunk of the guardhouse door, told of Mistress Marana's departure. Shenna still didn't look up. By the time her eyes dried out, twilight had burned away, leaving night in its wake. The tallow candles were flickering away in their holders, a feeble light trickling out to illuminate the central chamber. A single guardsman, likely the same one who had arrived with Mistress Marana, sat at the table in the corner, noisily eating what smelled like a hearty beef and vegetable stew. A ring of steel keys sat on the table beside him, gleaming in the candlelight. Her stomach groaned and gurgled, and Shenna realized that she hadn't eaten anything since that small plate of gruel at breakfast time. Hours of terror and anticipation had kept her mind off the growing emptiness in her belly, but now that her fate was decided, there was nothing more to distract her. Shenna doubted she would get anything to eat, of course. Condemned prisoners were rarely given food in the days leading up to their appointment with the executioner. Some people claimed that it was to preserve the prisoner's dignity by keeping them from soiling themselves in the death. Other, more pragmatic voices held that it was senseless to waste perfectly good food on someone who would be dead soon anyways. Though Shenna suspected the real reason was much more immediate. To weaken her resolve through starvation, making her less able to resist when the guards finally dragged her to the chopping block. Shenna had never actually witnessed an execution before. Crime was a rare thing in Riverwatch. She did recall one incident a few years back when a farmhand was publicly beheaded for murdering another man in a drunken brawl, but Shenna had been so frightened that she'd stayed away from Riverwatch for almost a month after the execution. Even the meager suffering she witnessed daily as Mistress Marana's apprentice pained her heart dreadfully. The idea of actually watching someone's death deliberately inflicted, even on one who had killed someone, was unthinkably cruel. Even if, as Mistress Marana said, the death itself came without pain. How would she know, anyways? And for that matter, what would they do with her once she was dead? Would they stick her head on a pike in the market square? Hang her body up by her heels to feed carrion birds? Bury her with her head between her legs? Weigh her down with stones and toss her into the river? Shenna had heard one rumor that there was a particular place where they would raise up the bodies of executed criminals from the dead and use them for slave labor until they rotted away. She couldn't decide which fate was the worst one, and the notion that she would at the very least be dead by the time it came to pass was cold comfort. Don't think about it, Shenna frantically told herself. Think about something else. Anything. Well, what else was there to think about? Everything else just seemed so unimportant. The songberries would be ripening in a few weeks. Shenna wouldn't taste them. The Spring Moon Festival was almost here, and what of it? The townsfolk certainly wouldn't push the date forward to accommodate her. And what about that boy lying in Mistress Marana's cottage, the one she had healed from near death just hours ago? Would he be at all bothered that the girl who had saved his life was to be executed? Would he even care to learn her name? Shenna knew better than to hope that he would mount some kind of heroic rescue. She was far too old for that sort of romantic nonsense. The world was not a just place, or a happy place. She'd learned that well enough. The sound of snoring wafted through the bars. The guardsman had finished his stew and was now resting his head on the table deep in slumber. Shenna glanced out through the bars of her window at the waxing gibbous moon, just now reaching the pinnacle of the vault of night. It was late. She sighed and laid herself down across the bench, but couldn't bring herself to sleep. Somehow it just didn't feel worth the effort. There would be time enough for slumber once she was dead. A shadow moved across the moon. Shenna sat upright and looked at the window to see the dark shape of a bird perched on the stone windowsill. The creature slipped through the bars and hopped down onto the stone bench beside her. The candlelight revealed a deep gouge across the bird's breast, one talon stripped to the bone, and the half-skeletal face with a small violet flame flickering away in the empty eye socket. It was the crow. Her crow! Not only this, but it was carrying something in its beak. A small droplet of purple? A songberry! Probably the very first one of the season. Shenna smiled as the creature placed the violet pearl down on the bench and nudged it toward Shenna with its beak. Shenna picked up the gift and turned it over in the candlelight. The firmness on her fingertips told of the perfect level of ripeness. It was just the right size, too, large and full with plenty of juice, but not so large yet as to drown out the flavor locked away in the skin. There was even a little halo of pink at the bottom where the stem would have joined, a small touch of youth for that extra sting. Was it safe to eat? It had after all been picked by a living corpse. Would she get sick from it? Or was it poisoned? Shenna shrugged and popped the luscious little pearl into her mouth, letting the sweetness carry away all of her concerns for a few blessed moments. What did it matter if she got sick from it anyway? She would be dead in a few days either way. And if it was poisoned, well then, so much the better. She wouldn't be able to make the execution. Well, a single songberry was hardly a feast, but it did manage to quiet Shenna's stomach to a degree. "Thank you," she said, reaching out to stroke the feathered half of the bird's head. The little crow hopped forward and brushed itself up against Shenna's side, the violet flame in its eye dancing with delight. Shenna considered her new companion. How had it found her? And how had it known to bring her a songberry, her favorite? She had used a portion of her own vital strength to give life to the creature. Had that forged some sort of connection between the two? Maybe it was showing gratitude for having been given new life? Could she possibly learn to communicate with the bird? To understand it and make herself understood by it? Shenna looked through the bars at the guardsman. He was still slumped over the table, fully in the thrall of dreams. The ring of keys was still visible there, beside him on the table. Shenna looked back at the bird. It had slipped through the window bars easily enough, and the cell bars weren't much narrower. Maybe, just maybe. "I don't suppose you could fetch me those keys without waking the guard up, could you?" Shenna whispered, half joking. All at once, the bird jumped up, spread its wings, and fluttered to the cell bars. It slid between the vertical iron rods, hopped to the ground, and strutted slowly and silently across the chamber floor. At the foot of the table, it spread its wings and with a single silent flap, leaped up to the top of the table, snatched up the ring of keys in its beak. A single snort was all the notice the guardsman took. Shenna watched agape as the crow slipped off the table and glided about halfway back across the chamber and marched right up to her cell door with the keys. How had it understood her so easily? She hadn't even meant that request seriously. Still, good fortune was good fortune. She reached through the bars, took the keys from the crow, and began trying the lock. A minute later, the cell door swung open. Shenna crept out of into the central chamber, carefully set the keys back down on the table, and slipped out the guardhouse door. The streets of Riverwatch were long since deserted, but Shenna still moved with great caution, keeping to the shadows and ducking through alleys whenever possible. She wasn't entirely sure where she was going exactly. Indeed, where could she go? In her state, she wouldn't get very far before the dawn arrived and her escape was inevitably discovered. And even if she could get far, she had no idea of what lay more than a few leagues beyond Riverwatch. Would she be forced to take to the forests and live like a bandit? She glanced up at the crow, fluttering from rooftop to rooftop, as though scouting out the way before her. At least she wouldn't be alone. After a time, Shenna wandered into the market square. It looked so different without the crowds and market stalls cluttering it up. The festival decorations hung still in the absence of any breeze. The moonlight seemed to cast a light dusting of snow across them, as though winter still lingered. The only movement at all came from the far side of the square, where a few torches lit the docks as the merchants and dockmen slowly loaded up their barges bound for Accra. Of course! The barges! River traders usually left before dawn, their schedules rarely giving any slack. By the time anyone noticed her absence, Shenna would be far beyond reach. She'd never been to Accra before, but she had heard many tales about it, about people who came to that famous city to seek fortune and make glory for themselves. She didn't know if she could match those tales, but if anything, it would be a better life than hiding away in the forest like a fugitive, waiting for someone to catch her. Shenna crept through the shadows along the edge of the market square and onto the wooden dock platform, taking great care not to be seen by the dockmen. She stepped silently onto the barge and slipped down through a hole in the deck into the cargo hold. There she fumbled her way forward towards the bow and wedged herself into a tight gap between two crates. Finally, weariness overtook her, and she drifted off with the crow snug in her arms. That's that.
Fuck.
Wow.
Big fan of necromancy.
Oh, yeah.
Good to see you.
The crow is best boy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's so good.
Yeah.
But how could Shenna have treated Madame Morlana, or whatever her name is, so
Mistress
badly?
Morana. Oh,
Mistress-
I don't know. How could she?
How could she have?
So horrible.
She brought her in and shouldn't do this, and shouldn't do this to her. She deserved
I know.
for that.
I know. How dare you get yourself executed? I'm going to be so embarrassed.
What will the neighbors think?
Yeah, that was actually one of the. I had so much fun for dreaming that up, because Mistress Morana's part in the story. I trust this isn't a spoiler. She's basically not going to show up again.
Oh,
Figured, yeah.
She served her purpose. Exit stage left.
Yeah,
Oh.
that's what happened to Minter.
And when I was telling the story to my sister the other day, she said, "So wait, what actually happened to her? She her apprentice escaped. She's probably going to get blamed for that, and they've sent for an executioner. What's going to happen to her?"
Oh,
So, just to, on the off chance that someone thinks that she's probably gonna take her place on the executioner's block, I just want to make it absolutely clear that this bitch fucking had it coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Her mentor had it coming.
Yeah. Couldn't have happened to a nicer person.
Of
Okay,
course.
I can see that.
Dang. Wow.
Yeah.
I think she's totally gone. She's totally gone.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Yep. Incidentally, I just started up on my my little corner of Dunn's server a little thread for this story, in case anyone wants to come
Ooh.
along and gab.
All right.
I'd be down.
Still haven't come up with a good title for it though. Shenna's story is still very much a work in progress. A working title.
But Aaron has died, unfortunately.
Oh dear.
Oh well.
I heard a phone coming. Maybe he's going AFK or something.
Yeah.
Probably.
Well, I think a good working title would be the One-Eyed Crow. Maybe.
Well,
Because the crow seems to be fairly important from what we just heard.
yes, that is a tempting one. I'm not sure how it would fit.
As I said, working title, just something until you figure something else out.
Yeah.
Well, we can put a focus group on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To the focus groups.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So Tarek's thing is probably gonna take the rest of the time, and I have to go in 30 minutes. So we'll just do Tarek's, Eric's, and then I'll just do mine. Maybe sometime in the evening next week.
I really do appreciate that. Thank you, Don.
Yeah.
No worries.
And it's 4,000 words. Just a quick recap. Last time I left off about, I don't know, like 3 weeks ago. When we left off, Merrick had left to go start his training, leaving Aviana alone to, start her job with the Chancellor. And where we find her today it's the next day, and she's kind of just waking up. So that's where that leads us today. Hold on one moment. Just moving this. Okay. Oh, shit. Aviana looked through the hole in her ceiling. The sky was starting to shift from the dark colors of night to the red and orange hues of morning. She gently rubbed her eyes with her fist as she shifted uncomfortably in her burlap sack. Her eyes were heavy and her head was throbbing. Her head was throbbing harder than any drum ever could. She had been unable to sleep as she had spent most of the night tossing and turning in a vain attempt to find comfort. What little sleep she did achieve was constantly interrupted by unending thoughts and distractions. I can't do this, Aviana said to herself, her attention turning to one of the rafters above where a large black rat was looking down at her. But I can't run away now. I spent almost all my dharma. It's not like there's anyone else willing to hire me, she said to the rat. The rat made a chirping noise, then lifted its paw to its mouth and nibbled on it, before placing it back down on the wooden beam. Merrick hasn't even been gone a full day, and I'm already talking to vermin, Aviana said with a sigh. She shifted onto her other side in hopes that she would be able to find a comfortable sleeping position. Suddenly, her stomach began to growl, causing a whine to leave her lips as she sat up straight again. Aviana reached into her knapsack and pulled out her bag of food. Reaching inside, she took out the loaf of bread Mikhail had given her and took a bite. The bread had become hard and flaky due to the cold. Taking a bite out of the crusty exterior felt like biting into stone, and the flakes that sprinkled into her throat as she chewed caused her to choke as crumbs fell around her. She dropped the bread onto the floor, coughing as she reached over to her bucket and scooped the chilling water into her mouth, ignoring the cold that bit at her hand. After several handfuls of water, she wrapped her hand around her cloak for warmth. When she turned her attention back to the bread, she saw that the rat she was talking to was now sitting in front of her, staring at the food. Aviana stared at the rat, and it briefly glanced back at her, but kept its attention on the half-eaten bread. Here, she said, annoyed, as she struggled to rip a piece of bread from the loaf and tossed it over the rat's head. The piece left a small trail of breadcrumbs and flakes until it landed on the other side of the loft as the rat scampered after it. Aviana yawned and packed the rest of her food away, tucking it into her burlap bed. Her eyes grew heavier until they finally closed. She lied down for another attempt at sleep, which thankfully came as her mind went numb with exhaustion. As she slept, she felt as though she was lost in oblivion. No dreams, no stimulation, just an empty void of peace. It was the kind of sleep she rarely received, between cold howling winds, snow falling through the roof, noises coming from rats and other vermin, and the occasional feeling of hunger pains. However, the blissful void came to an end when she felt something rubbing against her leg, tickling it. She slowly opened her eyes and giggled slightly. Yet she yearned to resume her peaceful sleep, but whatever was tickling her would not stop. Her tired eyes were drawn to the side of the burlap sack when she noticed something squirming in the bag with her. Her eyes shot wide open, and she screamed as she pulled herself from the bag and heard a hiss as she kicked her way out. The bag began moving across the loft, smacking into boxes as it attempted to flee. Grabbing the end of the bag, she pulled it up, revealing a fat rat that turned to her and hissed, its red, beady eyes scowling. Despite the creature's size, it was unbelievably fast as it fled up the support beams and into the rafters, then out the hole in the ceiling. Aviana looked at the sack and found the bottom of it was a large hole. Looking inside, she found that the cloth that she had used to hold her food had been torn open. She turned the bag over, hoping to see her usual amount of food, but all that was left was the cloth, sparse breadcrumbs, tiny pieces of jerky, with none of her remaining cheese in sight. Aviana yelled in frustration and stomped on the wooden floor, causing it to creak loudly as though it would snap. She took another glance at the hole where the rat had fled, scowling, and saw that the skies were beginning to turn orange and purple, and stars were starting to appear. Qatar, she said quietly as she began racing towards the stairs. If I hurry, I may be able to buy some food before I have to go meet the Chancellor, she said to herself. Just as she was halfway down the stairs, she felt one of the steps give way as she put her foot onto it, and the plank fell to the first floor. But she was able to pull her foot away just in time before it fell through. Aviana growled in frustration as she carefully and slowly walked down the remaining steps. Once she reached the storehouse entrance, she placed her hand on the large wooden door. She remembered that the Chancellor's instructions about showing the coin to the doorman. She thrusted her fingers into her cloak pocket and moved them around her knife. She felt the coin's jagged edges right next to her two remaining dharma. Just to be sure, she took it out of her pocket and held it in her hand, observing it. The cold silver stung her fingers as she held it and rubbed her thumb over the imprint of the bird before placing it back into her pocket and walking out the door. By the time she had reached the bakery to purchase more bread, it had closed for the day. Thankfully, though, the butcher nearby was willing to sell her leftover jerky for a dharma. With the jerky in hand, she began walking towards the north side of the trade district as her stomach began rumbling again. She took a piece of jerky and bit it, pulling her head to tear off a piece. The meat was chewy and had a salty and smoky taste to it that dried her mouth as she chewed. When she looked down at the bundle in her hand, she noticed that some of the pieces appeared to have been burnt and blackened. She continued to eat, doing her best to avoid the burnt pieces as she walked towards the Dove's branch. As she walked through the emptying city streets, the sound of shutting doors and windows closing for the night made her realize just how lonely she felt without Merrick there. It was odd not seeing him, even once today. For the last several years, every day, he would come and check on her, even if it was for only a moment. Sometimes it would be to wake her up as she overslept, to make sure she had eaten something, or just to make sure if she was doing all right. Yet here she was about to go work for the Chancellor, and he couldn't be here to see it. I don't know what I'm gonna do I don't know when I'll see him again. It gave Aviana a hollow feeling, admitting that he was gone, that she wouldn't be able to rely on him for help anymore. Her thoughts turned to the days just after the siege and how he helped her to survive. After the fire, she recalled being unable to do anything. All she could do for weeks was sit in a corner, surrounded by darkness, and cry. Yet, Mara kept her safe in a dilapidated building they had made into a temporary home. He made sure that she ate and drank, even forcing her to do so if he had to. Merrick nearly worked himself to death just to ensure that she remained safe and fed. It was through his kindness and care that she was able to get well again. And after she had gotten better, she decided to get a place of her own, as she didn't want to be a burden on him any longer. Yet, I've always been a burden, Aviana said to herself as cold shame spread through her body, sending chills down her spine. Her stomach continued to growl as it was unsatisfied with the meager offerings of jerky she had given it. She looked down at the remaining pieces in her hand, all of which were burnt and crispy. She quickly took the remaining pieces and shut her eyes tightly before shoving them in her mouth. After losing the orphanage, she had learned that whatever edible food she could get, she should eat, since it wasn't certain she would be able to find more the next day. She chewed as quickly as she could, just enough to get the sooty meat down her throat without choking. The awful taste of ash, burnt beef, and salt assaulted her senses as she swallowed, her stomach threatening to vomit them back up. She could feel her face contorting in disgust as the taste wouldn't leave, and the salt had left her mouth exceedingly dry. She bent down and took some freshly fallen snow off the ground and placed it into her hand and placed it into her mouth. As it turned to water, she rinsed it around her mouth and lips before spitting it out. Though most of the taste had left, there was still an awful aftertaste of ash that wouldn't leave. By the time she found the building she was looking for, the sun had set, and the moon and stars had graced the sky once again. Hanging from a pole attached to a 2-story building was a wooden sign that showed a dove with a tree branch in its mouth. There was nothing special about the building. It was similar to all the other ones in the trade district. Wooden supports to hold it up, a stone foundation, windows with warped glass, and a blue shingled roof. Given that this was a place the Chancellor had invited her to, she had somewhat expected it to be as decorated as the other establishments she had seen in the Noble District, or at least be made out of brick. She walked up to the light brown door in the center of the building and wrapped her fingers against it. Suddenly, a small slit opened up from the top of the door, and a pair of dark blue eyes looked down at her. "What do you want?" a male voice asked. "I'm here to see the Chancellor," Aviana said, praying that the doorman didn't ask for her name. "Regarding?" the voice asked. He's supposed to give me a job tonight. Oh, and I'm supposed to show you this." Aviana lowered her hand into her cloak and pulled out the silver coin, raising her hand to the view hole to show the doorman. The man behind the door observed the coin as she spun it around for him before closing the view hole. "Hold on just a moment," the doorman said. Aviana placed the coin back in her pocket as she heard the sounds of locks being released before the door swung open and she walked inside, the doorman quickly closing it after she entered. The interior of the building was fairly uninteresting, but it was large and open. It had the usual interior of most buildings in the city had, and was held up by wooden beams with white plaster walls. There was a large den to the right of her with a fireplace where a fire was roaring and flickering, as well as a pile of kindling just next to it. Just across from the fireplace sat a long wooden table with several stools underneath it. Behind the table was an open kitchen. She could see an unlit fire pit with a cooking spit, along with a baker's oven next to it, and next to that was a large wooden cabinet holding a variety of table settings, from wooden plates and bowls to cups and goblets. Aviana turned her head to the left and noticed a small sitting area next to the window, populated with several comfortable-looking chairs, as well as small round tables. Yet, the items that really caught her eye were the bookcases that were lined with books in a variety of colors. Aviana was about to walk over to the bookcase when the doorman suddenly spoke. "The Chancellor told me you were supposed to purchase something from Florin. Did you?" Aviana turned back around and looked at the doorman. He was a tallish man with tan and rugged skin and deep lines running down his eyes and forehead. While on the surface he appeared to be a bit lanky, his strong shoulders and firm posture said otherwise. Looking at his face, she noticed that his right eye was bloodshot and deep red lines leading from his pupil to the rest of his eye. He wore a maroon long-sleeve shirt that was stained with various colors and paints, as well as a pair of brown pants and boots, both equally colored in paint. I did, sir, Aviana replied as she reached into her pocket and grabbed the hilt of her dagger, pulling it out for the doorman to see. She couldn't resist smiling, almost hoping he'd be impressed. The scoff that came from the doorman's mouth surprised her, as he shook his head as though he was trying to hold back a laugh. The Chancellor is waiting for you in the courtyard out back, the doorman said, sounding like he was trying to suppress a snicker. He pointed to a door to the left of the kitchen area. Aviana nodded and walked towards the door. When she arrived, she reached down, turned the bronze knob, and pushed it open and walked through. The door led to a large dirt-floored courtyard that she slowly stepped onto. She took a quick survey of the area and noticed that it was surrounded by other buildings, none of which had windows. The only windows that looked out into the courtyard, or only window that looked out into the courtyard, was on the second floor of the Dove's branch. Even odder, though, was the yard was suspiciously clear of snow, unlike the rest of the city. The only light illuminating the courtyard came from the moon hanging over her. Hello, Chancellor Wayne? I'm here, Aviana called out as she walked towards the center of the courtyard. The area was eerily quiet. All she could hear was the sound of the river nearby and her heart pounding in her ear. She held her dagger's hilt tightly in her hand as the cold metal handle made her feel slightly more at ease. Suddenly, she heard what sounded like footsteps coming from behind her, but when she turned, all she saw was the dark entrance to the Dove's branch. Her heart thumped faster and louder, drowning out the noises from the river as she turned her body around several times to find her phantom stalker. I have a dagger, Aviana mumbled loudly as she felt a cold sweat jerk down her forehead as she struggled to pull the dagger out of its sheath. Suddenly, she heard the sound of something running and then felt something brush past her. Aviana cried out in terror as she turned to run back towards the safety of the Dove's branch. However, before she could even reach halfway across the courtyard, she slammed into something, causing her to be knocked onto the dirt floor. She groaned quietly and looked up. Standing over her was the same shadowy figure she had seen 2 nights ago, staring down at her with its face hidden behind a mask. The shadow was holding a sword with a silver blade that gleamed in the moonlight. Aviana didn't have time to scream before the blade came down, landing just between her legs, resulting in a dull thud as it hit the dirt. Aviana kicked her feet and squirmed away as the figure raised its blade again. She kicked blindly against the floor in an attempt to get on her feet. After several moments, she finally managed to pick herself up off the floor and sprint to the other area of the courtyard. When she turned her head back, the shadow was looking towards her direction and began slowly walking to her. Her right hand shook violently, causing her dagger to bounce as she placed her other hand on the sheath and pulled it out. She dropped the sheath to the floor, her arms and hands shaking, making it difficult to hold the dagger straight. She held the hilt with both hands and pointed it at the approaching figure, who was now only several feet away from her. The shadow continued moving towards her, his sword poised to attack before swinging it horizontally. The shadow's blade clashed into Aviana's dagger, causing her body to jerk to the left and the dagger to fly out of her hands and into the darkness as she fell to the ground. As she fell, Aviana watched as the figure swung again and seemingly missed, but cried out as she felt a pain in her left arm. Thankfully, she was able to get up quickly this time and run as she placed her hand to her wounded arm. Her eyes had adjusted to the darkness just enough that she could see where her dagger had landed. As she ran, she turned to face the figure and saw it approaching her again, just as slowly as before. This caused her to run even faster, despite the protest of her lungs. She reached the dagger but as she bent down to retrieve it, she stopped. And when she looked at her hand, she saw it was covered in a wet red liquid and had a coppery smell. She looked at her arm and saw that it had been cut just below the shoulder and was slowly dripping blood down onto her sleeve, staining the cloth. A meek squeal left her mouth, but she was unable to speak, let alone scream. She turned around and saw the shadow still coming towards her. Each slow step more menacing than the last. She slowly walked backwards, facing the shadow, and only stopped when her back hit the wall of one of the neighboring buildings. Between the injury and the approaching shadow, Aviana felt like a trapped and terrified wounded animal. She felt shame eating away at her mind and soul, making her unsure if she wanted her to scream or cry or both. She couldn't believe how foolish she had been, believing that anyone would have taken an interest in her, especially the Chancellor of all people. Her eyes became misty as she rubbed them against her unruined sleeve and watched the shadow slowly approached her, its footsteps making a thud against the ground. What would Merrick do? She asked herself, whimpering. With the utterance of his name, a realization set in. She was going to die. It had only been a day since Merrick had left, and she was already about to break her promise. She told him she would be careful. He told her to be careful, yet she didn't listen, and now she would never see him again. I'm sorry, Merrick. She sobbed quietly into her arm as the shadow grew larger and closer. She could hear her executioner's footsteps getting closer, yet the shame and sorrow she felt was quickly being replaced by something else. Merrick wouldn't sit here and cry. He would fight until he couldn't anymore. And he would want me to do the same, Aviana mumbled to herself, wiping her eyes again, her sleeve now damp and cold, clinging against her skin. She began scowling as she stared at the shadow, who was now only a few steps away. Without thinking, she bolted towards the shadow and dived onto her stomach and picked up the dagger just below his feet. She looked up just in time to see the shadow about to swing down when she quickly rolled to her left. When she stopped, she thought the shadow had missed, but then cried out when she felt the sting of a cut on her leg. Yet she bit her lip and quickly got up just as the shadow was approaching her. Aviana gripped her dagger as tightly as she could, waiting for the moment the shadow was close enough. Just as it was upon her and about to make another swing, she swung first, only to meet its blade. The sound of clanging metal echoed through the courtyard for a moment, just before the shadow lifted its sword again and attempted another slow strike. Aviana lowered her hands and kept her dagger straight and charged at him, attempting to run him through. The shadow quickly moved out of the way and then smacked the hilt of its sword against her back. The force sent her face first into the ground, causing her to groan and whine as the spot he hit began throbbing in pain. She slowly rolled over onto her back and saw the figure standing over her, ready to strike again. Aviana quickly raised her dagger as she felt the blades collide, causing another echo of clashing metal. Unlike the last strike, this one was much faster and more powerful. The force of the collision made it feel as though her shoulder was about to be ripped violently from her body. Suddenly, there was the harsh sound of scraping and strained metal. Then she watched in horror as her golden blade shattered into pieces. Several stray shards managed to hit her cheek, causing her to cry out as she felt warm blood drip down her face. When she looked at her dagger, she saw that the golden blade was gone, and the red gem that had once adorned the crossguard now shattered. Her dagger was destroyed, and she was defenseless. It was then that the shadow placed the tip of its blade against her neck. From her position, she looked into the shadow's eyes through its mask. Looking back at her was a pair of cold, icy blue eyes. A part of her mind quietly said she should beg for her life and for mercy. Yet oddly, the feeling that was overwhelming her could only be described as hatred and disgust in herself. She didn't deserve to beg for mercy. Everyone who had protected her was gone. All they had sacrificed had been in vain. She had allowed herself to be weak, to be manipulated, and now she was going to die for it. Enough! A booming voice announced. The shadow pulled its sword away from her neck and stood at attention. Aviana turned her head to the source of the voice and saw that a figure was silhouetted by light coming out of the open door of the dove's branch. The change in light blinded her as she had to squint to make out the faintest figures on the silhouette, but it did little to help. Suddenly, however, she did see the silhouette nod, and a moment later, she felt an extremely painful smack behind her right ear before suddenly the world went dark and she fell back into the void. And that's it.
Interesting. You left us a good cliffhanger. I'm intrigued.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
cliffhanger is painful. In a good way,
Yeah.
because I want more.
I actually did a lot of research on this, like specifically how you are to knock somebody out. And the best idea, and from what I understood, the best idea is to like hit them where that artery is in your neck, your carotid artery is. You're supposed to smack it there behind the ear because apparently those are important pressure points, or just aim for the neck.
So I did notice the Princess Bride reference. I thought it was nice.
I didn't even know I made a Princess Bride reference. I honestly didn't see the movie till after I wrote this.
What was the reference?
Florin. But yeah, there is a coin called a florin.
Oh.
Well, that was so. Go ahead, guys. Sorry.
I just noticed
Yes.
I just noticed the Princess Bride reference because that's one of my favorite movies of all time.
They used to have florins in Ireland, although I think they were from before I was there. There were the pre-decimal coins that were still in circulation.
Yeah, there were. It was what was it? It was like 2 shillings and 2 pennies or something.
Yeah, I think
I know a guinea was a pound and a shilling, but I don't remember what a.
I think they were using florins at that point. I think they were using florins for 10 pence, but that I'm not sure. Because at that point they were using shillings for 5 new pence, but they were actually originally 12 pence. And you need to give that girl a break, or I will hunt you down and kill you. I will fly over to Florida, and I will burn down the entire state.
Good luck. It's mostly water. It's like
Bother.
Tell me. Do you bleed? You will.
Truth be told, I don't, but Aviana clearly does.
I think. Was I muted just now? Because I think you were doing a thing. I was talking, then suddenly.
Yeah, true. True. Sorry, I thought you were at a pause. Sorry.
Yeah. All I was saying was it's going to end with a rat defecating on her while she's starving to death, and then everyone's going to laugh. That's how it ends. Am I right?
No. You listen, you got to go through the struggle to get to the good part. That's the way life works.
Yeah, you've been saying that for months now. We don't believe you anymore.
Alrighty.
Fair enough.
Alrighty. Well, this has been good. Any other feedback from Tarek for Tarek? Any questions that you had about how your stuff was received? Like any specifics of what you wanted to get out of it?
I was just going to ask, like, I know this was sloppy reading on my part, but that's because I was trying to rush through it. I didn't want to, but I know you guys have places to go. So it was much more better written. I was just rushing through it, sadly. But any other thoughts, like, about structure, about, like, her mindset right now?
Maybe some more details about the interior of the building?
Yeah.
Usually you guys say I had too much.
Oh, but this time you were like...
You can never have too many descriptors of interiors.
That is true.
Yeah.
This time you're like, it's like all the other ones. It's only a Chancellor's building, so it's like everyone else's. So,
Fantasy is all about the imagination. Show us how that imagination of yours has been cooking.
Well, I'll be blunt. Like, this isn't even a spoiler. I already told you guys like how this is going to work. This is supposed to be just like the whole entire idea of this whole building is it's a front. Like, it's supposed to be like very unassuming.
So that her fight was supposed to be her initiation or something?
Essentially, yeah. This is an initiation. It's literally a trial by blood, if you will. But I tried to make him like a Michael Myers sort of figure, like where, he's very slow but very strong, if you get what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I don't know if I got that across as well as I would have liked, but that was the idea. It's like, you know, he's supposed to be just this intimidating figure he's supposed to be this monster essentially.
Okay, Becca, yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could
All right.
always, put in some details, but make it very clear that these are ordinary things. Use it as a way of describing the ordinary world.
I agree with that. This one's going to need some major things for the third draft going through, but I agree it could use a bit more detail.
Yeah. Okay.
But
I
good
think
as
that's
always.
I think that works as a usual testing the new person thing. I thought that was pretty clear from when the thing got called off. It was very, very interesting to see.
Well, the fight itself was very tense, and it didn't become clear until the very end that this was an initiation.
Yeah, that is definitely true. The tension was very good.
Oh, thank you. That was the one thing I was worried about. But I'm glad that guy was able to get that through well.
Yeah, because she doesn't know it's an initiation, so we should.
No, she thinks she's about to die. Period.
Yeah.
And I didn't think she was going to die because it was more story, but I didn't know it was an initiation either. So that's good.
My friend suggested that I do have her die there and then make the book about someone else entirely. Just let you go through this 16 chapters with this one character.
No.
So
yeah, that's why I did.
God, pull a Game of Thrones on us.
Well, I was thinking pull a Psycho.
Oh yeah.
Ico more than Game of Thrones, but that works too.
I know this how this could work. I know how this could work. Just simply, real quick, she does die there, and then Merrick comes back after 6 years, and then he's like, "Okay, where's my friend?" And then it's a murder mystery where you already know. It's like Psycho. You already know the murderer. It's now how does he put the pieces together?
Or maybe everyone dies.
Well, that would be an interesting concept, but I'm sorry, I'm too invested in Aviana.
I know that's the idea.
Yeah.
Somehow I get the feeling that Shenna and Aviana would be very good friends.
Yeah.
They seem like they've gone through similar experiences.
Yeah.
Oh, I see
I
that
get
too.
the
Yeah.
same feeling.
Yeah, I was thinking Shenna's like a witch Aviana in the manner of speaking. I'm not saying she's derivative, but it's a similar thing.
It's a common archetype. I won't lie. I'm not reinventing the wheel here. I just want people to care about this little girl.
Yeah. Well,
you guys don't want me to do that. What I just suggested. So I'm doing my job well.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, I will.
Well-
I'll read the first chapter of Super Shots at another point in time. Maybe I'll do it. Probably Tuesday or Wednesday afternoon, sometime around there. Either that or
Okay.
maybe Sunday if I have time, and I'll just bring Neph on, and we'll just. Okay, yeah, definitely not Wednesday afternoon. I have no time Wednesday. I have a book day. It'll probably be Tuesday.
You're late.
I know. But I will end things right there. See you guys later.